They laughed when we arrived. Literally. The Graal ambassador let out a quad chitter, a sound that echoed through the grand chamber like metallic wind chimes caught in a storm. It wasn't just them. The Valeri blinked their four eyes out of sync, a sign of amused disbelief. The Draxen, whose mouths didn't smile, thumped their armored chests in rhythmic mockery. I stood in the center of the hall, every eye on me, and I kept my face still. Not blank, asterisk still, asterisk controlled. Because if there's one thing they taught me in the diplomatic corps, it's that humans already walk in with a target on their backs. Fragile, low-grav species, late to the galactic party. We were the underdogs, but we knew that walking in. Their amusement stemmed from ignorance. Our bodies are softer, our ships not as big, our language unmelodic, as one HFY scholar so kindly put it. I'd read the reports before leaving Earth, heard every insult that had been muttered behind closed doors, every underestimation. But hearing in person, watching hundreds of alien delegates chuckle while I delivered our official introduction to the Galactic Concord, it was different. It was raw. And thus, on behalf of the Unified Council of Earth and her colonies, I humbly submit our application to the Galactic Concord. I finished. My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't shake. But inside, I burned. The Concord speaker, a gelatinous creature named Soloventh, floated forward in its nutrient bath, ripples of biolight dancing across its form. Acknowledged, it said, though rudimentary in advancement, the humans present a curiosity worth observation. Another wave of chuckles. Someone dropped a translation drone in mock pity. I smiled politely, bowed, and walked out of the chamber without a word. Back in my quarters, I didn't scream. I didn't throw a glass or punch the wall. That would have felt good. But this wasn't about feelings. It was about purpose. Humanity had been underestimated before, during the early space colonization years, during the AI divergence crisis. Hell, even when the oceans rose and we were forced to adapt or die, we always adapted. We always outlasted. They laughed because they hadn't seen what we'd become. They'd studied our broadcasts, intercepted our tech demos, and decided they understood us. But they were looking at a puzzle with half the pieces missing. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that we never showed our full hand. Our best technology was never broadcast. Our best minds didn't speak publicly. Earth had learned that visibility was vulnerability. That night, I pulled up the database. Every report, every military file I could access under diplomatic clearance. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was building a map, a blueprint, a crack in the mirror they'd built of their superiority. They thought our fire was a candle. They were wrong. It was a spark, and sparks, when fed, become infernos. Let them laugh. For now, a month passed, and the laughter didn't stop. If anything, it spread across comm channels, through backdoor galactic forums, and into the memes of half a dozen species. Humans, the punchline of progress. Someone even edited a clip of our arrival into a parody holodrama. I watched it once, smiled, saved it to a secure file. Someday, I thought, that little piece of mockery would be a collector's item. Then came the Concord War Games. They called them demonstration exercises, but everyone knew better. This was the real vetting process, the unspoken trial every new species endured. They wanted to see what we could do, not on paper, but in the void. Combat effectiveness, technological sophistication, tactical creativity. Most importantly, they wanted to reaffirm what they believed, that we didn't belong. I stood aboard the Raven as it emerged from slip space, silent and predatory. It didn't look like much, just another destroyer, sleek and dark, shaped like a dart dipped in obsidian. But beneath its skin was everything we'd learned in a century of quiet desperation. Quantum thought computation, adaptive alloy armor, gravitic dampeners, and a weapons system designed not to overwhelm, but to outweat. The Draxen went first, firing plasma lances that incinerated an asteroid the size of a mountain in less than a second. The crowd roared approval. The HFY followed, releasing a nanocloud that stripped a comet to subatomic particles with surgical precision. Applause. Then it was our turn. They expected brute force. A simple barrage, maybe a show of missiles and lasers. What they got was silence. The Raven launched with no fanfare, no grand salvo. It moved with grace, curving through asteroid fields like it was reading poetry. The drones came, automated Concorde targets programmed to simulate hostile action. Stealth variants, burrowers, quantum skippers. The Raven danced. It dodged mass driver rounds with micron-level adjustments. It deployed decoys that mimicked its signature with uncanny perfection. When it struck, it did so with precision. Rail cannons phased to bypass shielding. EMP webs that collapsed AI cores mid-thought. By the time the last drone shattered into light, the entire hall had gone quiet. The display screens showed the score: efficiency, speed, creativity. The Raven didn't just top the board. It shattered it. Even the Ethereai, cold and calculating, pulsed in acknowledgement. I remember looking toward the Graal delegation. They weren't laughing. One of them was leaning forward, mandibles twitching in a way that meant confusion or concern. After the exercise, no one spoke to me directly, but I noticed how they stood straighter when I passed, how they stopped mid-conversation when I entered a room. They didn't respect us yet, but something had cracked. The image they held of humans, clumsy, weak, irrelevant, was starting to dissolve. They thought we were too late to the game, too backward to play. But we weren't here to play. We were here to change the rules. Respect, as it turned out, was conditional. A performance could earn silence, even hesitation, but not trust, not inclusion. After the Ravens demonstration, we were no longer mocked, but we were isolated. Invitations to Concorde strategy councils conveniently never reached our inboxes. Sensor data from border systems was encrypted beyond compatibility. Important updates were always delivered after the fact. Subtle, deliberate, coordinated exclusion. They weren't laughing anymore, no. Now, they were watching. Carefully. And that told me everything I needed to know. They feared us, but they didn't understand us. Not yet. And what the galaxy doesn't understand, it tries to control or eliminate. So we responded like humans always have, by evolving faster. Every night, aboard the diplomatic carrier Unity's Edge, I sat in the dim blue glow of the command suite, parsing transmissions. I wasn't a soldier, but I'd been trained in something better: adaptability. Earth's finest trait. The other species thought linearly. Predictably, they measured threat in megatons and fleet sizes. But humans? We counted in variables. In potential, we started small. Our AI, Vena, wasn't just a program. It was an emergent intelligence modeled on creative logic structures, fed historical data from humanity's greatest polymaths, philosophers, and strategists. It spoke in Shakespeare quotes and battle maps. And it learned. Vena cracked the Concorde encryption protocols in 27 hours. Not the outer ones, the core systems. We didn't steal anything. Not yet. We didn't need to. It was enough to see fleet routes, supply chains, political shifts, hidden arguments buried in polite communiques, what the Ethereai feared, what the Draxan desired, where the Graal moved when no one was watching. That's when we realized the truth. The Concorde was not united, not even close. It was a pressure cooker of rival interests, historical grudges, and mutual suspicion. And the humans? We were the spark threatening to light the gas. I compiled the first internal human strategic dossier the next morning. Leverage points of galactic hegemony. It read like a weapon, not a report. The Unified Council back on Earth sent no reply. But 3 days later, I was given access to full-spectrum espionage assets and granted unrestricted autonomy under Protocol 9. That was the moment it stopped being diplomacy. From that point on, we played two games. In public, we were the polite newcomers, observing, asking questions, taking notes. But behind the curtain, we were architects laying the groundwork for something bigger. We forged silent alliances with outlier species, those long ignored or mistreated by the Concorde's elite. Shared tech with the Fendari, taught subspace tactics to the Yavik, built goodwill where no one else had bothered to look. And slowly, the galaxy started to shift, one conversation at a time. They thought they'd frozen us out. That isolation would make us irrelevant. But all they'd done was hand us the shadows. And humans? We thrive in the dark. It started with a whisper, an outpost gone silent near the Zarn border. Then a patrol ship lost, its distress signal warped by gravitational interference. Within 2 weeks, 5 Concord systems vanished from the network. No messages, no survivors, just static and disrupted space-time fields. The official word was technical anomalies, but no one believed that. Not after what we found on Calzoreth. I was there when we arrived, riding aboard the Vigil's Path, a stealth recon frigate with enough sensors to peel back the veil of a neutron storm. The moment we dropped into orbit, we saw the truth. Calzoreth was broken. The moon had been torn in half, like it had been gripped by a giant and pulled apart. Chunks of it floated in a silent ring, still venting atmosphere. The planet below was worse. Cities atomized, oceans displaced. All done without warning. No declaration of war, just erasure. The Zarn hadn't just returned. They'd evolved. Their ships no longer moved. They folded, slipping between layers of space like ghosts. Their weapons weren't energy or kinetics. They were singularity projectors. Artificial black holes deployed with terrifying precision. Entire fleets fell into themselves, gone in seconds. The Concorde tried to respond. 3 separate fleets launched in a month. The Draxans sent their pride, fortress ships bristling with plasma artillery. The Etherii released swarm mines, logic-based war algorithms in physical form. The Grawl deployed gravity lances capable of warping the crust of a planet. None of it mattered. The Zarn dismantled them without effort. The battlefield became a graveyard of arrogance. For the first time in centuries, the Concorde knew fear. They didn't ask us to intervene. Of course not. That would have meant admitting weakness. But humanity doesn't need permission to do what's necessary. We launched the Ghost Protocol. The Raven returned, this time leading a flotilla of Black-class corvettes. Vessels built not to dominate, but to disappear. Cloaked in adaptive light shift armor, they glided into Calzoreth space without triggering a single Zarn alert. I watched from the command chair as the crew executed the plan we'd spent weeks perfecting. We didn't meet the Zarn head-on. We fractured their perception. Vena exploited their reliance on compressed time signals, injecting false data into their command stream. Our decoy ships emitted radiation spikes designed to mimic failing drive cores, luring them into ambush zones. And when they struck, they found only shadows. Echoes. The final phase was surgical. We lured the command hive into a false retreat corridor, directly into the gravitational wake of Calzoreth's broken moon. Our singularity dampeners activated at the perfect moment, nullifying their escape folds and locking them into local space. Then we collapsed the ring. Chunks of moon fell like a planetary guillotine, tearing their lead ships apart in real time. And when the last Zarn vessel went silent, the Raven hovered above the ruins. There were no cheers, no applause, just a void and a new kind of silence. Not the kind born from absence, but from respect. Respect is fragile. In the aftermath of Calzoreth, we expected the Concorde to extend a hand. Gratitude, dialogue, something to suggest they'd seen the value in humanity. Instead, we got audits, demands for technical transparency, coded suggestions that we submit our ships for joint oversight. One delegate even said, with the barest hint of diplomacy, it is imperative we assess the potential destabilizing elements of Terran intervention. Destabilizing. That's what they called saving their lives. Behind closed doors, we intercepted whispers of containment. That word again. A relic from Earth's own dark past, now aimed at us from across the stars. We'd exposed the vulnerability of their system, not by attacking it, but by doing what they couldn't. And in their fear, they reverted to the only play they understood: control what threatens you. We didn't take it personally. We took it as a lesson. When the orders came down from Earth, they were clear and unanimous: withdraw. Not just diplomatically, economically, technologically. Every trade deal was paused. Every software integration ceased. Terran embassies became sealed silos. Within a week, Our systems had gone dark across a quarter of the Concorde's infrastructure. At first, they didn't believe it. They thought we were bluffing. But then the dependency gaps began to show. Terraforming protocols failed. Logistic AI stuttered. Medical diagnostics slowed. They hadn't realized how quickly we'd become embedded. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. The message was simple. Asterisk, you needed us before. You'll need us again. Asterisk. And then the galaxy blinked. It started in the core worlds, dense, overpopulated systems with interconnected economies. A strange anomaly in the biofields. At first, they called it a fungal bloom, then a mutagenic pathogen. Within days, it had a name, the Zorix plague. Within weeks, it had a body count in the billions. No cure worked. No protocol slowed it. The disease was adaptive, rewriting itself each time it encountered resistance. Whole cities quarantined. Moons burned to prevent spread. Entire species on the brink of collapse. They didn't call us, not right away. Pride still stood in the way. But pride doesn't hold up against extinction. When the first Concorde fleet landed on Earth's orbital threshold, we didn't turn them away. We didn't scold them. We listened. And then we acted. Project Lantern activated across 6 systems simultaneously. Our orbital gene forges synthesized reactive countervirals on site. Terraforming drones dispersed them into stratospheres, where they descended like glowing mist, cleansing, healing. In less than 72 hours, the death rate plummeted. Our teams left behind everything. The cures, the tech, the schematics. We asked for nothing. At the heart of it all, I stood before the Concorde High Assembly once again. The same hall, the same faces. But this time, no one laughed. The Graal leader stepped forward, removed the crest from his chest, and placed it at my feet. A symbol of service, submission, gratitude. No words, just silence, and a bowed head. They called it the Red Rain. At first, it was a misnomer, an eerie nickname whispered in frightened huddles on colony worlds. But it wasn't poetic. It was literal. Crimson vapor, drifting from the sky like mist soaked in blood, coating everything in a fine molecular sheen. The first signs appeared on Virax 3, then spread to Alara Prime, then to the inner rings of the core worlds. Where it fell, it transformed the living. The plague didn't just kill. It rewrote. Tissue dissolved. Neural structures unraveled and reformed. Victims screamed as their own thoughts turned against them. Entire populations reduced to writhing, crimson-spattered ruin. And worse, it learned. Every treatment the Concorde deployed became ineffective within a day, sometimes less. The pathogen mutated on the fly, absorbing biotechnologies, folding them into itself like a mocking echo. The Concorde tried to hide it at first. Censored transmissions, isolated traffic between systems. But the silence was louder than any siren. People panicked. Systems collapsed. And behind the chaos, the plague continued its patient advance. When the Concorde finally asked for help, they didn't send envoys. They sent survivors. I remember the Ethereite delegate, usually cold and composed, collapsing in the hall, her biolight flickering erratically. I held her trembling form in my arms as she begged, "Help us, or we're gone." We didn't hesitate. The Unified Council greenlit Protocol Horizon within minutes. No committee votes. No hesitation. Every available Terran fleet mobilized. Orbital gene forges were pulled from cryo-storage, some decades old and experimental. Terraforming drones were rearmed with retroviral dispersion units. The AI Vena split herself into 12 fragments, each tasked with optimizing a regional counterattack. I was stationed aboard the Ark Heart, flagship of the Cure deployment. From low orbit, I watched our efforts unfold. We didn't attack the Red Rain. We outmaneuvered it, rewrote it. Terran retrovirus strains wrapped around its mutagenic core and began injecting false data, tricking it into neutralizing itself. In the air, the crimson vapor began to lose color. It thinned, turned translucent, then faded entirely. On the ground, the infected collapsed, not dead but purged. Their minds, their bodies scarred but salvageable. It took a week, one of the longest weeks in galactic memory. But in the end, we won. We didn't charge for the cure. We didn't demand territory or favor. We left behind open-source medical libraries, seeded into planetary networks. We deployed reconstruction drones. We trained their medics ourselves. On Cinder, where the rain had hit hardest, I was met by their High Regent on the remains of what was once their capital square. She carried her ceremonial blade, a relic passed through generations, said to be drawn only in defense of her people. She didn't draw it. She laid at my feet and knelt. The gesture required no translation. That day, across thousands of systems, a signal went out, not from us, but from them. A universal broadcast shared in every Concord language, across every known frequency. Asterisk, humanity is no longer a question. Humanity is the answer. Asterisk. Now, when I walk into the Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord, no one laughs. The air is different, heavier but still, like a forest just before a storm, charged with something unspoken. Delegates pause mid-sentence when I enter, voices softening, postures straightening. The Grawl, once so fond of their chittering mockery, stand when I pass, heads bowed ever so slightly, a gesture of deference not even their own kind always receive. The Draxan, proud warriors who scoffed at diplomacy, raise their fists in silent salute. And the Etherii, those cold lights of logic, pulse faint blue in my presence. Respect, encoded in rhythm. It didn't happen all at once. Respect never does. It built, layer by layer, word by deed, battle by choice. We never forced it. We earned it by showing up when others hesitated, by doing what needed to be done when others debated, by offering open hands where others closed fists. We didn't conquer the galaxy. We inspired it. The Concord began restructuring just 3 months after the plague ended. Emergency protocols were revised, voting blocks reshaped, and in the center of it all, a new seat was formed, not honorary, not symbolic, but binding. The Terran seat, equal in authority, equal in voice. When the vote passed, it wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming. I remember stepping onto that day as for the first time, the seal of Earth beneath my boots, the emblems of every Terran colony etched in metal around the edge. I didn't feel pride. I felt responsibility. They had mocked us because they misunderstood us, feared us because they couldn't categorize us, tried to contain us because we didn't fit their mold. But we weren't chaos. We were change, and change had come. We began sharing more of our technology, selectively, carefully, not to dominate, but to uplift. Terraforming processes that required 1/10 of the energy. Translational AIs that allowed the first real interspecies poetry. New alloys, new medicine, new philosophies. We didn't just show them how to survive. We reminded them why they should want to. The galaxy changed around us. New alliances formed. Old rivalries faded. Forgotten species stepped into the light. In every corner of the stars, the Terran influence could be felt, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as examples. Even now, some whisper, in back rooms and encrypted channels, they wonder what else we're capable of, whether this was always our plan. If we're playing a long game, they've yet to understand. Maybe we are, but we never asked for this war, never sought to outshine anyone. All we did was show up, show what humans are when the universe challenges us. We were the joke. Now we're the standard. Aliens once mocked humans. Now they salute. Now, when I walk into the Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord, no one laughs. The air is different, heavier but still, like a forest just before a storm, charged with something unspoken. Delegates pause mid-sentence when I enter, voices softening, postures straightening. The Grawl, once so fond of their chittering mockery, stand when I pass, heads bowed ever so slightly, a gesture of deference not even their own kind